too, by the way, of a regime that, has questionable human rights record. But I mean, I think the subject is a very nuanced, complex one. And I obviously don't have the privilege of knowing precisely what lies behind the letter, but I hope that it's the government taking a more enlightened view of trade than it has in the past. I think one of the problems the UK has had is that it has put its ideology, if you like, ahead of British national interests and refused to do trade deals with many developing countries. I don't think Saudi is a particularly good example, but many developing countries, Pakistan, for example, without those sorts of countries improving their human rights. And that can be a double-edged sword, because what happens in the end is either you don't do a trade deal with that country, in which case the people of that country are worse off as a result. British people don't get the goods that they should be getting at the cost-effective prices that perhaps they could otherwise get them. And also that country doesn't develop. So it's not obvious that by requiring ideological improvement, if you like, in these countries before you trade with them, that is beneficial for everyone concerned. However, having said that, there are regimes with whom we need to be very careful when we trade. I think Saudi is a fantastic example to look at, because it's a country on which we are going to increasingly rely as this cost of living crisis unfolds, as the need for fuel becomes ever more prevalent, if you like, ever more important. And so I can see a bit of a move here towards pragmatism in the British national interest. And we just need to step very carefully as we go forward.
And this came after this story came after MPs raised concerns that the government had dropped the terms human rights and rule of law from a list of proposed objectives in talks for trade deals with the Gulf Cooperation Council. And they were saying, wait, hang on, are we not going to include human rights and rule of law as one of the criteria? Wasn't it just complete and utter wishful thinking to suggest that even if we had included human rights and rule of law as a condition for, signing trade deals, that these countries would have complied anyway? They're states in and of themselves, that they don't fall under our jurisdiction, so technically they can do whatever they like. Why are we always trying to impose our ideology on other countries?
Well, that's a brilliant question. I've never really understood why we conflate trade and ideology. Human rights is a slightly different thing. I think that's fundamentally important. But I know that we have tried to use trade as well as aid, and perhaps aid is more justifiable, as a mechanism to export Western values, democracy, the way we see, with the way we think political systems should be set up and so on. And I think it's fraught with problems. And you take China, for example, that's a country that unashamedly puts its economic interests over and above any form of ideology. It has very strong domestic ideology, but it doesn't seek to export it when it does trade deals. So the Belt and Roads Initiative, for example, which is effectively China securing its international resources, has no human rights prerequisites in its dealings. And as a result, it has gained massive influence across a lot of the countries where we would like to have influence. And had we adopted perhaps a more China view of trade, we might now be in a position to impose our values and to require these countries to improve, because they've become so much more reliant on us. Instead, what we found is that a lot of these countries have pivoted towards China. And so, it is a balance. It is trying to get things right without empowering and keeping in place dictators that are damaging to their own people's interests. But it's quite a nuanced, complex subject.
So I take your point about the fact that